Did you know that snooker's ice-cool gentleman, Steve Davis, really accepted that he hates some of his fellow players? Behind that cool exterior and robotic precision is a man who felt real enmity towards some opponents, who made his life a living nightmare on the table. Let's start with the most hated. The rivalry that consumed Davis and took him to the deepest corners of competitive hatred. Stephen Hendry was Davis's kryptonite, his nemesis, an unstoppable force that eventually met the first immovable object of Davis. During the 1990s, Davis confessed to something shocking, which sent a wave through the snooker world. He openly said that he hates Stephen Hendry. It was raw hatred that ate the demeanour of the six-time world champion. But why such intense feelings towards a young Scotsman? The answer lies in a devastating word that's dominance. Hendry systematically ripped off everything this Englishman had ever built by defeating him. For more than a decade, Davis was the undisputed king of snooker, winning 6 world titles and other tournaments with efficiency like a machine. Then this slayer came, with a baby-looking face from Scotland who played with a fearless aggression, which left Davis looking outdated and dull. This psychological war was so cruel. Every time Davis stepped into an arena where Hendry was playing, he knew that he was facing someone who could exclude him in every department. His attacking style, incredible potting ability, and his clutch genes at decisive moments made Davis feel helpless, a feeling completely unknown to someone who has been king in the sport for so long. Hendry's age made it worse. Here was Davis in his prime being schooled by someone younger than his little brother. The media loved the story, stating old guard versus the new blood, experience versus raw talent. But for Davis, it was a bad dream. His hate developed less from matches and more from the fear of losing titles. Davis built his entire personality around being unbeatable, methodically and mentally stronger than everyone. Hendry shattered the image with his fearless shot-making and incredible match-play records. Davis's 4-year unbeaten run at the UK Championship ended with a 3-9 semi-final defeat to Hendry. With Ronnie O'Sullivan on TNT Sports, Davis admitted,
"So for most of the 90s, I didn't like him at all. Hated him. Hated the thought of him being better than me. Didn't even want to acknowledge it existed."
If Hendry was a professional nightmare to Davis, then Alex Hurricane Higgins was his personal horror story. Davis did not mix his words while describing the 2-time world champion. He called Higgins a terrible character, which made him really intimidated by being in the same room. The comparison made by Davis was both funny and explanatory. He compared Higgins to Taz, a Tasmanian devil from our childhood favourite Looney Tunes cartoons, a whirling cornetto of destruction who only left chaos behind him. Higgins's fast-paced, unpredictable style stood in stark contrast to Davis's measured and methodical game, an opposition that fueled a rivalry built on more than just technique. Higgins was a wild child of snooker, its dangerous rebel who was living on the edge and brought the same dangerous energy to the table. Where Davis was calculated and methodical, Higgins was instinctual and explosive. The psychological impact on Davis was deep, a man who thrived on control, facing a rival who represented pure chaos. The presence of Higgins alone was enough to confuse Davis, and he questioned his own vision of the game. The Hurricane's existence was different, and this fundamental dispute of personalities created an atmosphere of real fear and restlessness. The record of the head-to-head may have favoured Davis. He usually got crushed by Higgins, but this statistical dominance came at a psychological cost. Every victory was earned hard, and every encounter left Davis exhausted. Higgins represented everything Davis didn't have, and perhaps everything he was secretly afraid of becoming if he let his guard down for a moment. The devastating nature of Higgins's game destroyed the careful and controlled environment that Davis needed to perform his best. When Higgins was around, anything could have happened, and for a person like Davis, who planned every shot ahead, this unpredictability was really terrible. While Davis did not use the word hatred while talking about Dennis Taylor, his rivalry probably had the most emotional charge of his entire career. The 1985 World Championship final was a cruel psychological war that lasted for the early hours of the morning and left marks that may not be completely cured. Taylor represented something specifically disappointing for Davis, a player who should not have been able to defeat him, but somehow found a way when it was most important. Unlike the clear talent of Hendry or the chaotic talent of Higgins, Taylor was more working, similar to Davis in many ways. This made him feel even more pain. The famous black ball final of 1985 was revealed to be Davis's nightmare. He dominated the first session, leading 7-0, ready for another comfortable world title. But Taylor refused to step back, clawing back frame by frame, turning what should have been a coronation into a grueling test of endurance and mental strength. Psychological torture was just superb. Davis saw the 7-0 lead become 9-7, then 13-11, and finally slip perfectly in the most dramatic way. More than 18 million people watched on television as the match went past midnight, witnessing Davis's worst nightmare live. What made Taylor particularly galling was his glasses. Those specific upside-down glasses became a symbol of everything that disappointed Davis about his opponent. Taylor looked like a librarian, not a world champion, yet here he was beating the major force of the game when it was most important. The competitive tension between them went beyond that one match. Every latter encounter lifted the weight of that defeat, a constant reminder of the night when Davis's invincible game was becoming disastrous on the biggest platform of the game. Taylor proved that Davis could be beaten, and worse, he had proved it in front of the largest audience in snooker history. But the trio was far from the full extent of Davis's dislike. During his career, he stored a collection of players who got under his skin for various reasons. Each represented a different type of frustration or challenge, which tested his famous demeanour. Tony Knowles was a stylish left-handed player who could produce moments of talent, which left Davis looking pedestrian. The unpredictability of facing a southpaw, combined with Knowles' ability to enhance his game against the top opposition, made him a particularly bizarre rival to someone who preferred to control every aspect of a match. Tony Mayo presented a different challenge, a solid, methodical player who could grind the results through sheer determination. For Davis, facing Mayo was like looking into a slightly distorted mirror, looking at a version of himself that was different but unsettling. Kirk Stevens brought glamour and flair, which was rapidly the opposite of Davis's no-nonsense approach. The fascinating style of the Canadian and his Hollywood looks made Davis feel inferior, which caused an underlying tension that was beyond the simple gaming rivalry. Then there were players like Silvino Francisco, Mike Hallett, and Dean O'Kane, solid professionals who might not have been household names, but had the ability to cause upsets on their day. For Davis, these were opponents who could ruin the plans carefully laid. The emergence of players such as Stephen Maguire, Shaun Murphy, and even Ronnie O'Sullivan represented new challenges for old Davis in later years. These were players who grew up seeing him and had no fear or reverence for his reputation. They played with a freedom that Davis had never experienced. Mark King was another player who discovered ways to disappoint Davis. He used a combination of strategic nous and opportunistic talent to snatch victory when it seemed impossible. For someone who prided himself on never giving opponents chances, facing players like King was a constant source of irritation. What made Davis's admissions so fascinating was how they revealed the human side of someone who had spent his career appearing almost robotic in his efficiency. The hatred he felt was about losing control, losing identity, and losing the image he carefully created. Each rival he disliked represented a different challenge to his dominance. Hendry was a better talent who made him obsolete. Higgins was chaos that threatened Davis's ordered world. Taylor was the mirror that showed him his vulnerability. Others kept reminding him that perfection was impossible, and even the greatest players could be brought down by their opponents. The intensity of these emotions showed how much snooker meant to Davis. It was not a job or even just a passion. This was his entire identity, wrapped in green baize and coloured balls. When the opponents threatened that identity, the response was genuine. Steve Davis's confession about hating the opponents reveals the emotional depth behind his legendary snooker career. His intense rivalry was not inherent in maliciousness, but stems from maintaining excellence under pressure. These emotional battles added drama and humanity to the history of the sport. This raises a question. Should the champion be honest about his feelings, or always look diplomatic? Share your thoughts in the comments, and for more snooker content, click the screen below.